Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 131. I have Aaron Clarey on. He's an author of several books. He also goes by the name of Captain Capitalism. He is an economist, a very good scholar, and a very good social critic. He's written on the Roosh Forum and some other very interesting shows. He also is a regular on Rule Zero. It's the first time I've had a Rule Zero guy on here, but hopefully we'll get some more on. How are you, Aaron?
Great.
Yeah,
great.
I hope you're warm. You got your coat on there.
It's in the basement, and it's chilly down here, so I got to wear this. I hadn't thought about that when I was designing the house, but it's a little chilly in the
sometimes
basement.
It happens. Yeah. I miss. Yeah, at least you have basements up there. We don't have any basements in Texas, unfortunately.
Why don't you get tornadoes like every other day?
We don't really get tornadoes here, but we get tornadoes in some parts of Texas. I mean, Texas has. There's a joke that in Texas, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. It's always the worst thing for me, at least, is this is the allergy capital of the world, weather-wise. Just all kinds of things in the air, just pollen and all that kind of stuff.
Is it worse in spring then?
It's actually worse in January, with what they call cedar fever. There's cedar pollen all over the air. So it gets so bad that sometimes I lose my voice.
Wow. Okay. I wouldn't have thought that in January. I thought that's because I got allergies as well. And usually you're waiting for winter because there's your respite. But oh my God, I had no idea about that about Texas.
Yeah. It's never really good down here. Yeah. But how are you? So how you doing?
Yeah. I'm tired. I did a whirlwind tour of nieces and nephews and family and all that before Thanksgiving, so I don't have to do Thanksgiving or Christmas. And so now I'm finally playing catch up before the year ends. So we get exciting things like fourth quarter estimated taxes and putting stable in the lawnmowers and the weed whackers and all that other kind of fun late fall stuff.
Oh yeah. So I guess I should start. How did you get into all this free market economics and all this stuff? You were a banker in banking for a while, I think.
Yeah, no, a long time ago. It was my 10th grade teacher, who I really loved economics. Like he was like, "Wow, this is really cool stuff." And so that's the origin. And then I was a econ major at first, then went to finance and all that. So that's kind of how the path originally started. And then the libertarian free market bent came from back in the day. Economics was at least a little bit more empirical than it is now. Now it's just like, okay, how do we abuse the data to make it look like socialism will work? But back then it's like, no, they're a little bit more serious about it. And so the data would just come in here like, oh yeah, it's common sense too, where if you pay people not to work, they ain't going to work. And if people have to work and keep what then you let them keep the majority of their money. That's how you get the majority of economic growth. So that was what brought about the political. I don't even want to call it bend because I don't bend. It's the data. This is what it says. And so that's where I had the political economic philosophy that I do now. But then as time went on and on and on, it kind of served me well because I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. There's a dot-com bubble, the Asian currency crisis. You could see these things happening as it goes on. But what you found out later on is that no one cares in these industries to be empirical or to make a long-term profit or to do what's in the best interest long-term society. It's, we're going to fire you if you don't change these numbers. Like, change the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. So that's kind of the background I had back then. So I did go through banking, but now I'm more, as you said, a social commentator.
Yeah, Aaron, I think I'm older than you are. I was 20 years old when the Soviet Union collapsed, and none of us thought we'd be fighting this stuff 30 years later. It's so bizarre, and I think the thing that didn't change was that academia never changed.
It got worse.
Yeah, it's gotten worse. And I don't know. I don't really. Do you think that's just? Is there some kind of mental? I mean, are they just evil, or are they stupid, or
no?
What?
I think what it is it's just human laziness. It's just human nature. humans want to survive. And for the longest period of human history, starvation was the number one thing that threatened everyone's life. There's disease and all that, but where's the food? Until no more than 150 years ago, 96% of Americans were farmers. Now you have the Industrial Revolution, combustion engine, all this other stuff, but it was hunger, and one of the key survival instincts was laziness. Laziness was not a bad thing. It was, whoa, I only have so much food and so many calories of energy. I'm not going to go chase down that deer. I got to be more intelligent about it. And if I don't really have to, I'm not going to do it. So it's very ingrained. And now it's kind of where the economy and technology has advanced faster than the human brain has been able to adapt. And so we've been incredibly productive with advances in technology. And but we haven't gotten rid of our innate laziness. And now, even though it would take a fraction of the labor of calories of energy to work and make a living and enjoy incredibly good standards of living, people are so lazy. It's the default setting that if you can give them free stuff directly or the promise of free stuff, they will always go for that until things get so bad, as we've seen with various attempts at socialism, that you're starving and they're almost metaphorically slapped out of it, where they're like, wait, there's no food. Well, but there was supposed to be free food and free housing and all that. So it takes a long time. In the Soviet Union, it was 70 years. The Chinese, they switched in the 90s with Deng Xiaoping, where they essentially did abandon communism and went with kind of a hybrid system. It just doesn't, when you are faced with certain death and starvation, then in Argentina, I think they got sick and tired of 150% inflation every year. It has to get, then but until that point, until there's real pain, people will always default to laziness until their lives are actually threatened.
Yes, we're recording this 2 days after the election of Javier Milei in Argentina, which could be the most important election in the history of the world. At least
how long is he? It's going to be over in a year. The Argentinians, no offense to Argentina, but offense to you, you're all stupid. You all keep voting in free shit. This is like the third or fourth time you've needed an international bail. I've watched Argentina back since the 90s. They're not going to learn their lesson. They have an opportunity. They're going to squander it. It's a nice thing that'll happen for a short time.
Well, I hope that, but there is the old cliche, that hard times make strong men make good times make weak men, and weak men make hard times.
Yeah, I've just seen Argentina keep failing and failing and failing again, so I don't have a lot of faith.
Yeah, I know it's hard to have just faith in the whole species. You really, and I think because America was started as this country where everybody had to work and everybody had to build from scratch, it probably instilled an ethic here that really took a long time for it to go away, but it seems like it kind of is going away. And
it definitely is now.
And it seems to be, Thomas Jefferson even pointed this out, that he said that the farmers were more virtuous than the city people, and because they had to, they understood the connection between, and it's almost like because we don't have to fight for survival anymore, we're.
Oh yeah, I mean, look at what people's major problems are now. The major problems now are like, I'm whatever. Microaggressions, I guess, would be the epitomal example, where, I'm offended. Go fuck yourself. Like, you're offended? That's the worst thing? Someone disagreed with you? And so you definitely, you need a student loan bailout? We are so soft and so weak. And it can't be sustained. This will not be sustained. There's several things keeping us afloat now, but we will outconsume our technological advances and even our government spending and world reserve currency status. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and Aaron, and the thing that's changed too, though, is we have this, back in the 90s, Doug Casey called it the new class, but we have this growing group of people who essentially do nothing but go to meetings and push papers, and that's their job, and it's just like, why do we need these people? And it's. What do they actually do for us? And you look at some of these, I was in healthcare for 4 years. You look at healthcare, it's full of those people.
Mm-hmm. No, I think after and I don't know how it got to be. There's regular bureaucratic inefficiency, and so you can have entire armies of people employed that don't do anything and are paper and efficiently or effectively are dead weight loss. But I think there's almost an existential push for that where, to be perfectly honest, we could have the 1950s all over again where people live on one income. Someone stays home, raise the kids, but you have to cut the budget and you'd have to do without and you have to fix things. We could do that. But I think so many people are insistent that they have some kind of job, some kind of career, some kind of profession that isn't hard work, by the way, that isn't farming, that isn't plumbing, that isn't, but some kind of managerial white collar light thing that you are flooding the economy with this desired labor. And the employers are kind of like, well, I guess we could hire these people. We could pay them pennies on the dollar. And but inevitably, like a diversity and inclusion department and HR department. No, the MBA's middle and man. No, you could get rid of all that fat, get rid of all that bloat, and still be producing the same amount of GDP or goods and services that you would. But I think there's such a mentality and it's such an automatic, non-thinking operating machine. People are just going into the labor market. Corporates are like, okay, yeah, we can do that. And also keep in mind, Chris, it's not like corporate America leaders are all that bright or intelligent. I mean, you look at what Disney's been doing. They've been hiring activists to create slop. I don't think the train conductor is all that sober, or the captain's all that sober of the ship.
Aaron, that's the thing. I wish I'd realized this when I was in my 20s. A lot of these people are not that impressive. I don't know if it was just dumb luck or they knew how to play the game and played politics to get to those positions, or but they're really I remember I met a guy who was the CEO of Keller Williams Real Estate. That guy was impressive, but most of them aren't. It's you realize.
Well, I don't think you and I could really ever understand, because one thing I did get working out of corporate America, it is not meritocratic. It never was. Now, maybe the Keller Williams guy did get there, because usually you get these guys that got some hustle and game. But and I'm sure people have done studies on the nature of bureaucracies. But I think when you and I were roughly the same age, when we were young, we thought, oh, the president and CEO, that's pretty serious. And then you get, especially when the housing crisis happened, we had to bail out all these top league banks. That was where I realized, now no one knows what they're doing. It's a different beast. And the best I could come up with is that we have just continued on middle school. It really is just kind of this popularity game. There really is no grounding in reality that we got to make a good profit at a good price and efficiency and all that. I think it just continues on into more of a social game. And only if there's a crisis and it looks like the company's going to fail, do you get a Jack Welch, a turnaround expert, or a venture capital, someone coming in, or you have someone coming in from the outside and just completely undermines, like the mainstream media. I'll say, now we got the internet, and now we got YouTube, and now we have Twitter. We don't need the mainstream media anymore. And so I think there's got to be a technological change, or someone comes from the outside and either brings back the company or completely undermines it and obsoletes it. But I think people are just fat. They're lazy. They get to the position of power as long as the lights are on, steady as she goes. But it is not hard work, meritocracy, or efficiency that is the name of the game in any of these institutions.
Yeah, well, it does get to that point, too, where people things take on an inertia and they just they just run out of steam. I mean, I can remember when Sears was as big as Amazon is now. It's and Sears is nowhere now. It's
Well, and then how exciting do you think it is to work at? Think of what's it called? It used to be the hottest thing when we were young. Victoria's Secret, right? You're selling sexy female lingerie. Like this should be working in a candy store. And then until very recently, it was all, well, we're going to have women without limbs. We're going to have people with skin problems. We're going to have fat models. We're going to have refugees. We're getting rid of our Victoria Angels. Who wants to work there?
Yeah.
Like, what messed up? And they Rapinoe as the spokesperson for Victoria. Like, no, that's dead. So I think it's a popularity game that slowly takes over. And now it looks, I'd have to look up their income statement and balance sheet, but that is a brand that is now under threat of no longer existing.
Yeah, they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot. Bud Light did as well.
Yeah.
I will always remember Bud Light for the Real American Heroes commercials, which were the greatest radio commercials ever. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like to me they care more about the ideology now than their bottom line. That's what's really bizarre.
Well, and I've said this before, that's because I was in business school, and that's what they were teaching my generation. And so if you look at these people who are making their decisions, they're my age, and it was not about efficiency or anything. It was all about diversity and what kind of politics you have. And it only because it's not feasible, as Disney and Bud Light and all these other places are showing. That was a fun experiment we had with marketing to people because of their politics. I think that's over now, and you're going to start seeing companies slowly, because so many people are tied, their values tied up in it, slowly get back to boring old, good quality product at a fair price to maximize profits. I think we're slowly making our way back to that.
Oh, maybe we will. Yeah. It's really strange. You've done some books. Your most recently book is, about I believe, about what it would be like a world without men. So what can you tell us about that? So,
well, it's really, that's the title. It's in the book. I got sick and tired of hearing about how men aren't needed. I have other things in life. I want to go have fun, but I couldn't leave this planet without telling feminists and true misandrists, just shut the fuck up already about you now. I'm so I've heard it since I was a little boy. And then I want you, we all kind of knew, but I want to actually put numbers to the theory. And the Department of Labor they keep the data on what jobs do men work, what jobs do women work, in some impressive detail. And so before they took that data down, I grabbed the data, I got it on a spreadsheet. It's still up there. You can look at it if you want, Department of Labor. And I just said, okay, I've never been married, Chris, but it's like I've been nagged my entire life by women in this country about how I'm not needed and you better look out. And I'm like, okay, all right, here's the data. And so that's what I did. And so now it's this proverbial finger to modern Western independent, don't need no man females. So it's like, no, the fact is you are helplessly, keyword on like hopelessly dependent upon men. And without men, this society simply would not survive. It just would not happen. So that was kind of the premise of the book, is that I just got so sick. And it's kind of where Taming of the Shrew, where you finally man up and tell the woman to shut up. And here's how it is. And so I know they will continue to complain on, but I just wanted to get it out there so at least men would know, like, no, it's not true. We're actually incredibly valuable to society. Please shut up. And now we're not even going to listen to you anymore.
Yeah, I see it that way too. Look, one thing that looking at statistics said, I hear, oh, men get paid more than women do, and I just say, well, men do a lot more jobs that they're in which are more likely to kill them.
Yeah,
I mean, I had a great uncle who got killed in the coal mines. I mean, what are the most dangerous jobs that women do?
Well, there are women who work. I mean, they're very distinct minority, but there are women who they're the same dangerous jobs that men do. So it's not what's between your legs that's going to
have a lot of women doing them, though. I mean,
there's none. No, I mean, no. The two
maybe
major
sex work.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought about that, but that doesn't show up on the GDP figures because it's underground economy. But that would definitely be the number one, and it would be very dangerous. Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine the injury or death rates even are probably on par with men working in oil fields or something like that. But in terms of official economic data, not criminal activity, for lack of a better word, the two major employers for women is healthcare and education. Those aren't dangerous. Yeah. I'm guessing maybe the service industry, because you're interacting with the public a lot. And so you're a waitress is somebody who's drunk or fight or whatever, but it's not comparable at all compared to, say, linemen, coal miners, underwater welders, oil rig work. It just doesn't even come close.
Yeah. I think lumberjacks and fishermen are actually the two most dangerous, but yeah, there's a lot of things out there. Yeah. So yeah. And I know, and healthcare is how much of that healthcare work is, frontline, like nursing clinicians, and how much of it is medical coders and, pushing papers.
Well, the one of the odd, it stands out as a statistical outlier, but women are frontline nurses. Women dominate nursing. So, and that's everything from your, I think it's called the CNA, which is just your entry level, barely any training, to nurse practitioner and specialized nurses who are essentially doctorates. Women are very prevalent there. But then when you get to surgeons, I think they're only 19% of surgeons. And then doctors, I think they're only 30 something percent of doctors. Yeah. And then what you were speaking about before, they work a fraction of what men do and usually don't last as long as doctors. So women in the nurses, yes, rank and file. Coders, transcriptioners, your general administrative and clerical staff, I think that it might skew women. But I think there's some men in there as well. But it's one of the honest, fair jobs that women do where they actually do contribute to society would be healthcare. But it's largely in the nursing ranks that they do that.
And for whatever reason, it's been that way for a long time. Maybe there was just this realization that women were just better at that, and I do think that women can probably read patients maybe better than doctors can. They have that intuition sometimes.
I don't know if I believe in intuition or, magical Avenger superpowers. I think women just, the irony, we're all interchangeable. There's no difference between the sexes, yet women choose to think of the verb nurse. You're going to nurse people back to health. Who? Probably men. And the irony they don't see, it's like, women tend to gravitate towards that and preference. But I don't think they have any. I mean, I know I'd rather have a female nurse nursing me back to health, but today, not necessarily today's modern way. Honestly, it's just like you'd probably like to have a pretty nurse, not one that's cranky and pissed off. That's how men are, but we can't have that conversation about men and women being different and how that has an effect on our career choices.
Well, I think nurses generally seem to take a lot of verbal abuse and stuff from doctors, because doctors seem to have this attitude that they're untouchable, and they, it's like they're uncancelable.
Right.
You can't cancel them, so to speak.
Maybe that, but I do know several nurses, and where the clients, especially in hospice care or retirement, like these guys, they get punched. Not everyone who goes into a hospital is some law-abiding, well-behaved person. Criminals that get health. So there's certainly some drawbacks of being and a lot of nurses are not treated well. No, not at all.
She's gone now, but I had a relative who threw a cup of coffee on somebody, and that will get you kicked out of a home really fast.
Yep.
There's not much you can do, but hot coffee, that can. And I could never do that kind of work. Working hospice or something like that, I think it would just be so depressing.
Well, and especially in modern day times where we're talking about how people, we have weak people. Weak people are assholes. Weak people are mean. And so I don't envy, girls keep voting Democrat generally, and you kick fathers out of the household, you replace men with government checks, and then little kids grow up feral without fathers, but then they become adults, and now they're the ones throwing coffee in your face or cursing at you and calling you racial names and all that other stuff. Same thing with teachers. I'm like, well, too bad. This is kind of how you voted for it. I know you all hate Ward Cleaver, but at least Wally and the Beeve would be respectful to teachers and nurses. But nowadays, especially frontline ER, it sucks, but I don't know. This is the society you wanted, so here you go. Deal with them.
It's true. Although I think sometimes just dealing with I think a lot of nurses also and teachers leave too, because just of all the bureaucracy and all the, because healthcare is basically the government now too.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised you didn't find a lot of women working in the government, which I found interesting.
They're not. Well, no, that's the data. That the data is what the data
Yeah.
is. I think women are a little bit more overrepresented in government, but nothing significant. I think it's 53-47.
Yeah.
So they're, you could argue they're a little more overrepresented, but not really. But now also keep in mind, education is broken out of that. So education mostly is government employees. And maybe that would skew it, but the way the Bureau of Labor Statistics broke that down is education was its own separate thing. And then I guess general administrative, you know, the DMV guy you talk to, it's a 50-50 shot if it's going to be a guy or a gal.
Yeah, the Department of Welfare or something like that, you know, or the Social Security office. Yeah, it seems. Yeah, it's definitely. But you know, as you pointed out, you know, I think said one third of women are working in some kind of childcare. So basically, we've taken mothers out of the home, and as you pointed out, now before motherly duties were performed without taxes, but now they're all taxed. It's
not the majority of women, but there is an environment where, or a situation many times over, where there's a woman who works a job to pay another woman to take care of her kid because she doesn't have the time or the money to raise her kid, because that woman now has to work raising another woman's child because she doesn't have the time to take care of her kid. And so all women are doing in this certain segment of the economy is paying each other to raise each other's kids, where I'd be like, how about you just raise your own damn kid? And what's even worse, and the data, I'd have to refresh my memory on it, is between 30 and 50% of working women, all working women. So I'm not saying like you have to work in childcare or pre-K or where you actually take care of children, but 30 to 50% of women who work or working mothers, maybe it was, again, I'd have to look up the data. 30 to 50% of you are losing money because you're not paid enough to take care of the daycare. The daycare ends up costing you more. And if you just stayed at home and raised your kid, you would come out financially ahead, especially when you factor in some tax benefits. If I think early childhood tax credit or something like that. You could actually be a stay-at-home mom, but you got to get your degree and go work whatever dumbass social work part-time job it is. But I'm exhausted trying to explain empirical reality to people who are just going to make their own choices.
It's like I've said, if Rachel pays for Monica's birth control, Monica pays for Phoebe's birth control, and Phoebe pays for Rachel's birth control, did all three friends get free birth control?
No. Well, and I forgot to mention that, you're right. But here's the other thing, is the taxation, because now that there's actually a financial transaction, you got sales tax, you got income tax, where if you just raised your damn kid, you're not taxed for being a mom. But now you go and you work, and now you get taxed, and now you got to pay a woman. And this is a great little experiment we had where the women are going to rule the world. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be horrible.
Yeah, Aaron, how do you think we get out of this, or you don't think we can get out of this?
No.
I mean, you wrote another book called "Enjoy the Decline."
Yeah.
Where you're just saying, talking about ways to just figuring out ways to profit from the collapse. But you're still here though too.
Right. Well, no, I've been working on it. So there are two artificial supports we have going on right now that keep this. This should have collapsed a long time ago. Two things keep us going on. One, the world's reserve currency. We literally just print off more money and get ourselves out of it. And normally that would have inflated the dollar away, but any rival to the US dollar right now, all these countries are doing the exact same thing, even worse. So in that sense, I guess it's good because we don't have to pay for our own shit. We just print off more money. The rest of the world takes our US dollars, so we get a heavy subsidy from that. The other thing is our imports related to currencies in the US dollar, but I'm going to leave that out. In short, we got a lot of countries in the world that will do all of our work for us. So we all go major in fluffy bunny studies and diversity and inclusion and early childhood education. Meanwhile, Zhang over in China will make us a cell phone. I don't know why China, among many other exporting countries who export to the United States, just says, F that, we're not doing it anymore. We're going to consume our own products and actually enjoy a higher standard of living. But that is the other thing that allows us to keep going on, is if we actually had to produce our own screws, bolts, plastics, electronics, everything that we import from foreign countries, we actually had to produce that, there would be no fluffy bunny studies. It'd be like, no, you get to the coal mine, sweetheart. No, you're going to go and raise the kids, or you're going to get off your ass and you're going to go plow the fields. We would actually have to start working real jobs. But for whatever reason, the world keeps accepting our US dollars so we could buy stuff on the cheap and kind of essentially subsidize our workers here. We can, I mean, really, the stuff we're doing, like even this is not real work. This is a temporary, fleeting environment where I could be a podcaster. We could talk to each other on the internet. Yes. So it's I'm aware of it, at least. So that is what has kept this going on. But the day is going to come via war, or China, India, Russia, and the world just gets their communal act and says, nope, we're going to get stable financial or fiscal monetary policy. We're replacing the dollar. We're not accepting the dollar anymore. Things are going to get much more expensive. And it will inevitably come to an end where, like in communism, we were talking about before, food will become unaffordable. Housing will become unaffordable. We're already kind of on the way there. Argentina, if you want to look at a canary in the coal mine further down the coal mine, they're same thing. It all comes in through inflation. Yeah. And soon, Bipsy, with her kindergarten studies degree, getting paid $30,000 a year part-time work, she's not going to be able to afford food, clothing, and shelter. Soon there won't be food. You can see it in some of the major metros, though it's more due to crime. You don't have food, clothing, and shelter in the shelves no more. You have a literal Soviet grocery store down in San Francisco now. So this will continue on, and not until people's lives are threatened, where you're starving or you're homeless, will disproportionately women, because they're the ones spearheading this we don't need no and socialism and all that other stuff, but also some men as well, where, boy, I'd like to eat. It's like, okay, are you desperate enough to now work a job? And so it's not going to be until that point in time that this will end. But until that time, the majority, like, we could keep printing off money and we could keep paying kids to go and major in fluffy bunny studies, and people will do it, and they'll play make-believe adults until one day the electricity doesn't come back on. And now we got a no joke real recession on our hands. And the farmers are just like, nah, we're not making enough food for people anymore. We're just feeding ourselves. So it'll be sometime in the future, somewhere along those vectors, it will come. But it won't be until people's lives are threatened by nature will we start to rethink about what kind of roles are we going to play in society and what kind of jobs are we willing to work.
Yeah, and Aaron, we're already kind of seeing that, with what happened with the farmers in the Netherlands and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I don't. It's almost as if some of these so-called experts just think all of this stuff appears magically on the store shelves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And whatever made them think that we can just shut down the economy for 2 months over the flu, and then not be affected by all this. It's Well,
yeah, I mean, your people, back to what we were talking about before. Yeah. These people are delusional. They have no anchoring in reality. We're talking about politicians now, but like Ocasio-Cortez, that's an adult child. That's not an adult. That is a child who's never had to work a day in her life, although she did work a whopping 6 months, I think, as a bartender. Yeah. These people, they don't know where electricity comes from. They don't know where food comes from. And they'll keep pushing policies, and then soon, and you can already see it happen on a micro or municipal level, especially with places like San Francisco, New York, Seattle, Portland. You can see it happening. It's just that's going to be rolled out on, and then it'll go to the county, then it'll go to the state, then it'll go national, and then we're all going to be pooping in the streets. We're going to be wondering why we can't, but it'll take a while, but you can see it happening already.
I can also see to a certain degree, though, that people are realizing it's unsustainable. I mean, you do see people who, have their own little gardens. Although you realize, for example, I know some people told me, said, my HOA doesn't allow me to have a garden.
Right.
it's and that's another. I always say that's an example of people choosing to live under fascism.
Right.
Why they would do it, I have no idea, but they seem to have this illusion of security that.
Well, I think HOAs will go away if there's no food or electricity.
Yeah.
Karen at the HOA is not going to complain if you start making food. But yeah, people are not hurting enough. They are not hurting enough. Yeah. But the time will come, they will be hurting enough. I don't think I'll be around for it, but that is how this all solves itself, is when we are not able to support ourselves, or countries say, we're not giving you the stuff you need to survive anymore, produce it on your own. That is going to be the wake up call, and it'll take a generation. I'll be perfectly honest. It was New York. There was a social activist who got killed at 4 a.m. at a bus stop. Does this ring a bell? It was about a month ago.
No.
Okay, so let me show you.
Oh yeah, I think it does. His girlfriend, yeah.
Right. So let me
His
show
girlfriend
you.
was sympathetic to the killer.
Right, because he was black. The killer was black. She wasn't going to identify him. But let me show you what that tells you. Their politics mean more to them than death, more to them than life. These people will die before they admit they're wrong. There's another one. This goes way back. I think it's in the 90s. There's a gal named Amy Beale. She got murdered because she was going to save the minority, or not the minority. She was going to save the Africans, not minority. She was going to go to Africa, help Africans stop being poor, because we all know 19-year-old white girls from the suburbs have always solved Africa's problem. That's why Africa is doing just so well today, not investment from the Chinese. So she went over there. I guess she went to the wrong village on the wrong day, and she ended up getting killed.
Yeah.
Her parents went to the village and forgave the murderers. Again, they love their politics more than their own flesh and blood. Yes. And I think some people are so wedded and committed and mentally ill, they will never give up socialism. They will never give up not having to work for a living. They would rather die or have loved ones be dead than admit they were wrong and get a job. And so I think you're going to have at least a generation of true diehards, almost to the level of who's the cult guy? Drink the Kool-Aid back in the 70s?
Jim Jones.
Jim Jones. You are going to see a lot of Jim Jonesing going on, because these people, they've been nothing but socialists. Spiritual social. That's it. That's all they got. And if their socialism can't work, they'll die. They'll gladly take their own lives.
Yeah, and by the way, that's Amy Beale is Biehl.
Yeah, German spelling, yeah.
Fulbright scholar. Went to Stanford. That's what kind of gets me, is I just kind of look at myself and say, what's wrong with smart people?
Was she smart though? What was she majoring?
Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't an engineer. I guarantee.
I don't know. Well, it says Stanford, so I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, you can definitely go to. You got to be careful in some of these places if you go to the wrong neighborhoods. Well, even some places in America, but it's especially if you're a young lady like that. Yeah, it's
right. But obviously, be safe. But you will see. Oh, I'll give you another example. Thankfully it's only happened, I think, 3 times. If you look up at the news stories, but occasionally, and thank God it hasn't happened in a long time, you'll find a story about infanticide, where a vegan couple will not give their child protein, or their brand new baby protein, and then the infant dies. Again, they love their politics more than their children. And I would say, especially on the topic of women with feminism, I think feminists will go to the grave before admitting they're wrong. They will have society collapse around them before they admit that majoring in women's studies or journalism is not critical to society, and that the whole economic underlying philosophy of a feminist economy, or if there's such a thing as feminist economics, that it wasn't going to work. They would rather die than live in the real world and have to get some kind of real job. So I think there's going to be a stubborn, you're going to need a generation to die out, which communist economics will provide for very quickly. But you're not going to get reasoned like, hey, there ain't no food. You've pissed off the farmers. Ocasio-Cortez will vote Democrat until her and all of her constituents die of starvation. because it's more important to them to just, I don't know, be lazy sacks of shit than get off their ass and admit they're wrong and get a job.
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, it's so bizarre. I don't know what to say. You know, and I think, and we're also now. I was reading an article yesterday saying now we have to bring diversity to air traffic controllers, and guess what? This is creating safety issues.
Mm-hmm.
Although I've heard there's been problems with air traffic controllers ever since the really ever since the Patco strike. But
well, but here's another thing. In defense of minorities, we really ought to remove any kind of issue of diversity or traits, whether that's your gender, your race, sexual preference. It doesn't matter. What you're seeing is a competency crisis happening all across the Western world. You can waste your time debating, oh, did we let a black female who was underqualified into air traffic control? It has nothing to do with that. The main issue is we are no longer holding anyone up to standards. And here, just to show you, think about this. What do you think about Zoomer air traffic controller? Like, that concerns me more. It's not, and that's not even having anything to do with age. It's the fact we haven't held younger generations up to standards. And now you got a kid who's crying with some made up mental disorder that his teachers told him that he doesn't have. He's emotional. Where are you going to find air traffic controllers in the Zoomer generation, period? And so okay, yeah. Should you have some that's unfair where you're promoting people based on their color of skin and not the content of character? No, you should not. But I'm more worried about, look, you just told Yaden, Jaden, Baden, and Hayden, Tanner, Bipsy, Mopsy, and Madison that they're all brave and amazing because reasons. You haven't taught them math. You haven't taught them to show up on time. You haven't taught them anything. Oh, and now they're going to be building our bridges. I'm like, oh, we are so hosed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm glad I was in school before they were giving kids calculators all the time. Calculators were still kind of expensive back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't even know if, I mean, just paying cash in anywhere, whether it be a restaurant, a bar, or a grocery store it can be a nightmare. They don't know what to do.
Well, and you're seeing this happening already now, but it comes through several things. Yeah. But think of your average day and everything that has to work correctly for it to go right. You are talking literally millions of little devices and things and bolts and rivets and all that to do what it's supposed to do. And as you have the lower quality people coming in, it's a good day when they forget to put the tomatoes on your sandwich. But you're going to see more and more days where they didn't wire the traffic lights right because, she had to take 2 years of diversity inclusion courses in electrical engineering. And now you're creating car accidents and someone's paralyzed. You're going to get the wrong prescription because Tanner was told he's brave and amazing and emotional. And as long as he's got purple hair, he's great. But he gave you the wrong drugs. And now you're being rushed off to the hospital because you can't breathe. That's the stuff that you're going to have to be worrying about, is society just breaking down at the atomic level and our entire infrastructure not working anymore.
Yeah, and it's really weird because I don't know. Again, I don't. You don't think there's any? Aaron, I got to ask. What? I don't know how well traveled you are, but where do you think society is working?
Singapore, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Malta. Some of the Muslim countries, that's a kind of a wide array there, but Qatar, United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
I think, where you have, whether you like it or not, there's a theocracy there and you're not allowed to steal or cut your hands off. I think where the rules are followed. I think Japan, even though their finances are flawed, as well as would be Korea, but I think a lot of East Asian countries where they have culture and discipline and society is a more mature, well-behaved society. I think those are more stable countries. But that they're not, their finances still, they got the culture, their finances are not good. And so there's Singapore, there's Dubai, United Arab Emirates. There's Malta. These are kingdoms. I don't know any other places where people aren't fucking with the system. I really don't. I really don't know if there's places that are stable that much anymore.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, yeah. You said Liechtenstein and Malta, which are small countries. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've not been to those. I mean, well, Jonathan certainly raves about Japan. You know,
Well,
yeah,
they're thin, and when John and I talk about Japan, it's not about their debt to GDP or their
yeah,
labor force participation rate. The women are thin. There's no
yeah,
crime. The men are in shape. They're respectable towards one another. And
yeah,
okay, fine, they might have a lot of debt, but I have a feeling the electricity will stay on in Japan.
yeah,
So that's kind of the stuff that well, and even then, like they go really skewed when it comes to masks and
yeah,
travel restrictions and all. So there's no perfect place, but most of my analysis has switched from economic fundamentals to like, do you allow people to poop in your streets? You don't? Okay, cool. Tell me more.
yes,
But that's kind of my standards right now.
yeah. If you have a penis, do you go to the men's room? If you have a vagina, do you go to the ladies' room? Yeah, it's stuff like that. Do the trains run on time?
Mhm.
The
Do
old
do your little teenage daughters dye their hair purple and blue and change their gender every week
yeah,
and tat up their face? Really, honestly, I want to know. And people may not like Islam for perhaps some of the violent aspects of it, and I understand,
yeah,
but their women, their kids show up on time. Their women aren't sleeping around and spitting.
yeah,
You don't have half siblings. Or
yeah.
if you have multiple wives, maybe you do. But there's some rules. And I think that's what everything is. There are rules society enforces and people follow, and that is going to be much more of a functional society going forward.
Well, yes. Well, feminists will say that those rules are oppression. And
I
we
don't
got
give a shit.
and look and Aaron, look. America leads the world in psychoactive drug use.
Hmm.
And the other thing too is, you mentioned Japan. Japan has one of the highest life expectancies in the world. And if you're really looking at judging countries or cultures,
Mm.
that's really the number. I mean, how long are people living? I mean,
Mm.
are they getting sick? Are things, America has been declining since 2014. Life expectancy.
I'd say 1965, but okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we could go that way. Sure.
Well, we've still had some advancements, in medical technology and things like that. I had a cousin back in the 50s who had open heart surgery, and she died at the age of 4. And today she probably would have, made it to adulthood.
Hmm.
So there are advancements, cures for, different things like cures for, we've gotten rid of smallpox, we've things like
Yeah,
that. So,
we did in the
yeah,
past, but I mean, look, that America is long
yeah,
gone.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
It's long gone. It's not there. We got boys who cry
yeah,
themselves to sleep at 19 because they didn't level up on World of Warcraft 47, and girls are like, uh, for lack of a better word, they're men and they're having.
yeah,
We are
yeah,
not saving the world again or
yeah.
coming up with great medical advances.
Well, and I think a big part of this isn't necessarily feminism, but now that you've created such a culture of safety around childhood that you don't let kids go out and take risks anymore, do anything that's considered dangerous. Whether it be lawn darts or just walking to school by themselves.
Hmm.
Lawn darts. Oh,
Jarts. I remember jarts. That's
yeah, lawn darts. There were lots of things like that. So lawn darts, or
playground fights.
yeah, playground fights, high diving boards. It's
Oh yeah.
my grandfather walking 2 miles each way to school as a first grader, and I've mentioned that a dozen times on this show. But
Mm.
it's Aaron, I will say, I don't know if you've been there, but a couple weeks I went down to the Adopting Bitcoin conference in El Salvador. Wonderful place.
You liked it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they still have their issues to overcome, but I saw men who were men and women who were women. And that's a huge difference.
People were polite and they showed up
Yeah.
on time. Was anyone pooping in the streets?
No, nobody's pooping in the streets. That was one thing funny. Of all the Hispanic countries I've been to, it seemed like it was probably the cleanest I've been to. I didn't see a whole lot.
Really? Okay.
When you just see little trash and stuff on the streets, but that can go lots of different places. In Ireland, they have this competition, what they call tidy towns. So all these small towns will try to go pick up trash and try to be the tidiest town, and they get awards for this, and it creates a sense of pride. I saw that in Southern Ireland. So I thought that, I said, this is great. It just looks nice when you can just walk down the street and everything looks nice.
No.
Yeah, I don't, although, some of these countries where the people are coming out of, it seems like sometimes it seems as though if you have a civil war in your history, that helps things.
You need the thing with, obviously war is bad, but there's a reason you're having a war. It's because something ain't working. And it comes to the point that people are willing to kill each other. So, for whatever reason that might be, once that reason is gone, you at least now agree how to move forward. So I think a civil war does have kind of a, maybe not a cleansing effect, but it forces you to go like, we're going to do it this way. You can't have two plans. You have to have one plan and everyone has to be on board. So I could see where a civil war brings that about, except for China. China kind of worked bad for the mainland China. Taiwan did fine, but the mainland China, the post-Civil War didn't work out too well for them, but that's because
I don't know. I have no respect for China or Russia because I said Russia's been a death cult for 500 years and China's been a death cult for over 1,000 years. You look at their history of genocides. The Mongols also, but there's such a history there. It's crazy. But yeah, I don't know where, you're probably you're in South Dakota, so that's probably as good a place as any in America.
Yeah, it's my favorite place. Yeah,
it gets cold up there, but but yeah, it was the only governor in 2020 that I could ever consider voting for.
What, Kristi Noem?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind her.
She said I can't. I'm not empowered to do any of this, and that was.
And she's hot too. You got that going for you too.
Yeah, she's still pretty cute. She's around 50, but she's still and she grew up on a farm and had all these values. It's funny. I think maybe you should just need. I've heard, Aaron. It's kind of funny. One article I remember you wrote was that article about avoid women with horses.
Oh God, that's old. Yeah.
But I knew some girls who were around horses, and their parents said, horses really taught them to work hard.
Okay. Let me provide a caveat here. Okay, when I say horses, I mean Bixie out in the suburb who I want a horsey, like a hobby horse. When you're talking ranchers out in whatever Montana, Idaho, you need horses. They're tools. For herding and ranching. And the women who actually use horses for a farm or a ranch, okay, that's different. I'm talking Becky with her social work degree marries the president and CEO of some company, and she wants a horsey as a pet. Those women you avoid like the plague. But if you have a real farm girl who rides a horse for ranching, those are a little bit different. Yeah.
Okay, that's a key. I actually knew one lady who, I guess her husband went out of town on business or something. And she bought a horse and he was so mad. And you think about it, that's not just a major expense. A car is a major expense, but a horse is a lot more maintenance.
Yeah, a horse is dumb. Yeah. And I'm 100% serious about this. Aside from if she runs a ranch and uses the horse.
Yeah.
If your wife ever buys a horse without you knowing, you immediately divorce her. You're going to save money because that horse is going to cost you a lot more. There's nothing has ever, not once has anything good come from a hobby horse and a woman. It just does not happen. So that's a big red flag.
Yeah, I do know some who grew up, more with the farm type horses, or the ranching. Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, so. Girls who, I knew girls who were hunting when I was growing up too. They certainly have a different attitude.
Well, no, they're working at something. You're working at getting meat, or you're working at dressing a deer. Okay, we're working to bring in the cattle. But if you got, I just like a really big dumb dog that poops a lot, that's a horse. Yeah, that's kind of it is.
But
they are,
dumb dog that poops.
It's a big dumb dog that poops a lot. That's all
Yeah,
a horse is.
And dogs will do more for you.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the guy who went into the diabetic coma, and the dog got a hold of his cell phone and called 911.
Really? Oh,
Yes,
I don't know.
yes. And the dog was barking into the phone, and they let the dog ride with them into the hospital.
Oh boy! Oh,
yeah, they let it. Said, come on, yeah. So, yeah. I don't think they were allowed to do that, but the dog probably wasn't going to let him go. It was kind of,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, a horse wouldn't do that. Yeah. Horses were, but that was, horses certainly did. Before we had cars, they were important service.
Yeah, well, they were right. Sure, a horse to get around, and yeah, but I'll tell you, yeah, every time, not more.
Yeah.
Every time in banking there was a horse, they ended up bankrupt. They never paid back. The wife was insufferable, and I'm sure if I looked them all up, they'd all be divorced. But yeah, the horses are. It's not the most pressing economic issue facing the United States right now, but you never, ever, ever date a woman with a horse.
It's kind of like, some people buy these expensive cars. It's the same way,
Mm-hmm.
You've often been an advocate of, Aaron, that's something I've noticed too. You being an advocate of minimalism.
Mm-hmm.
I made it to the age of 51 and I was still driving my second car. It had 290,000 miles on it, but I thought to myself, I've got manual windows. I have a regular key.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have hardly any of this. And personally, if it was up to me, I wouldn't have had airbags.
Mm-hmm.
You can't buy a car like that anymore.
You are going to have to buy classic vehicles going forward. Yeah. And I'm not joking. That is my strategy because I have I got two vehicles that still have the roll-up windows.
Yeah.
One of my vehicles does not have air conditioning. Yeah. And I don't think I have a car that's younger than 10 years old. I really don't have even vehicles. I think, both my motorcycles are older. You are going to and it's going to be harder and harder to find vehicles. And I did get my first vehicle about 3 years ago that had the first electronic button pushy thing, like an electric locks. That's the first time I've had it.
Yeah.
But going forward, because these vehicles are so over-engineered, and the jury's still out about whether they're high quality or not. I'm like, you know what? I can pick up an old school, 70s, if it's in good shape. You can find a good used classic car for under 10 grand. I don't know. They're fun. They're easy to work on. And you're not going to have to deal with a tight compartment where, okay, to replace the alternator, I have to remove the engine. There's none of that. But yeah, the cars, I mean, that's actually great. You're only on two cars. That's awesome.
My Tercel went to 256,000 and I bought them both as a year old, and the Echo went to 290,000. And the Echo wasn't, I spent a long time trying to get it to pass the inspection, which if I'd lived in a rural county, I probably wouldn't have had to worry about that. But some states don't even have inspections. But, it's when cars get that old, they start to show, it just gets to that point where they're going into the shop more often. And you just, and if you're only depending on one car, it's kind of a nuisance. But yeah, I loved that car.
And as long as you got two crappy cars, I mean, inevitably they get, you'll wear them out and they're dangerous, like the axle goes or something. So you do have to replace them. But I don't, if you do it right, especially if you're single guys like us without the kids, you can find yourself some, I'm not too worried. It's annoying, but you should be able to find cars, at least people our age, for the next 30 years until we're dead, that aren't going to be too much a pain in the ass and also going to be somewhat affordable.
Well, that Aaron, that's so much of what we have now. So much of what we have nowadays is what I would call superficial prosperity. I mean, it's like electric pencil sharpeners or electric can openers, or these computerized thermometers, and the old-fashioned thermometers work just as well. It just seems like we're paying more money for this stuff, but it doesn't really give us any benefits.
I don't know why I got to have a computer screen on my car. Yeah. Why do I need this big? Why do I need a map? I know where I'm going. I don't need this big computer screen. Yeah. I don't need separate, what do they call it? Environment controls for the two people, one in the passenger seat and the other. Like, no, you're all going to be hot like me. or you're all going to be cold like
Yeah.
me. I control the temperature.
I do kind of appreciate the key fobs because it makes it easier to find the car in the parking lot. But
Right.
other than that, some of this stuff, and to their credit, they did add those little latches on the inside of the trunk. Why they didn't do that 50 years ago, I have no idea. But
right,
because that has happened to people, but it's very rare. But it's it costs $5. You might as well install it. So. But yeah, there's a lot of some of the stuff is just kind of ridiculous. Even I was in a major accident without airbags, and I was fine because I was wearing my seatbelt.
Right. No, it's the Karen effect where if the school marms and the worry warts and the mothers will over-engineer safety to the point that you can't look, by the way, I can't afford a car. Well, maybe stop having so many damn regulations. Like, what do you think? The start-stop engine, you think that doesn't add to it? You think having all the look, I understand safety, but if you want to eliminate, I think someone was telling me like they were shocked that GM did some estimates on like, okay, how many deaths can we eliminate by adding these features? And they had to do a cost benefit analysis. And the way the media portrayed it was, oh my God, they're okay with death. They're okay with people dying. It's like, no, you dumbass, because if you want to eliminate all deaths, they say you'd have to build a tank. And you can't drive it till you're going to get gallons per mile, but not miles per gallon. So but you guys all want the safety and this constant improvement be well beyond when you had optimized the product to begin with. I am never going to get a vehicle that dings or rumbles if I get a little too close to the shoulder or a little too close to the center line.
Yes.
I am not going to have a nagmobile like that.
Yes. Yeah. Or I put a bag of groceries on the passenger seat.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. And it says, oh, buckle your seatbelt. Who doesn't put a bag of groceries on the passenger seat? People do that all the time.
Yep. No, it's to the point where the old stuff, the analog stuff, is going to be more valuable than the latest digital stuff. And I already get frustrated dealing with my phone if I have to get a new one and all the shit I got to turn off. And no, I don't want this. No, I don't want that. But yeah, when it comes to the vehicles, we should be able to get by. I start looking at things like, it's only got to last 30 years, then I'll be dead.
Yeah, Aaron, that's what bothers, and now, they're talking about these kill switches. It seems like to me they want to do more things than just monitoring and controlling us. I don't know. That's, I often look at maybe going to a place like Mexico because they're a little more backward than we are. I mean,
they're not as
might be safer,
more laid back. Yeah, I mean,
fine. Well, you still have a lot of people in Mexico who, for example, are totally unbanked. I mean, it's still there's still a lot of places in Mexico where you have to pay cash, that kind of thing. Where it's not nearly as monitored and it's there probably aren't as many cameras around, that kind of thing.
Right. But there's less Karens in Mexico. They got other pressing issues. And if it comes to living under some kind of nanny Nazi state where a bunch of HOA Karens are now like, I don't know if you've seen this, but St. Paul, the city of St. Paul, they have their first all-female city council. I'm like, well, when do you start locking things down and putting curfews and make the guy with the funny mustache look like a freedom fighter? I can't imagine what an all-female city council is going to do socially in terms of rules. That's just going to make, in the name of safety, it's going to be a nightmare. And so Mexico, I think, you have less of a nanny state where you could just go and, can I don't smoke pot, but can I smoke a joint on the beach of Mexico and be pretty assured the government is going to come and arrest me and throw me in jail? Can I go and get a prostitute in Mexico and my entire reputation is not ruined? Am I allowed to live and be a human being down there? And the answer is probably yes. You could be more of a human down in Mexico than you can be in some places in the United States.
You can buy a lot more prescription drugs over the counter too.
Yes, absolutely.
That's there's a lot more things like stem cells and more experimental stuff going down there. And not to mention, it's usually cheaper. I mean, people, it's not unusual at all for Americans to go across the border to get minor dental work done and stuff like that. It's Yeah. 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 So, well, that's good. You think you're in South Dakota? Do you think you might leave America, or do you think you're going to stick around?
Asia is my next trip this winter.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go down to Vegas,
Yeah.
get the Southern Command going down there. But then I am going to be doing a reconnaissance mission out in Asia, finding out where I can buy property and, where I might have to go in case the United States goes to pot or too many Karens get elected.
Yeah.
But that's the next step. But yeah, I like South Dakota. I like it more because of the mountains and everything. But I'm not wedded to the United States, especially if the electricity is not going to be on. So I do have to come up with a plan B.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, well, I hope it's do you follow Andrew Henderson by any chance? You probably do.
I don't know him personally. It's just everyone's got.
I don't know him either, but I certainly follow him a lot. He gives away a lot of he gives away a lot of good stuff for free too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've known him for over 10 years. Actually, I remember before he became Andrew Henderson. It's just that is a huge undertaking unto itself, and you got to be ready for it. You got to have the time to do that properly when the time comes.
Any other influences you think are beside the Rule Zero guys? Yeah, Rolo and.
Oh yeah, I mean influencers.
Yeah.
Well, critical drinker, neurotic, culturally speaking. It's a Gundam. These are just, I guess, the people I listen to.
Yeah.
In terms of political economics, I think Tucker Carlson would probably be foremost. Tim Pool, Matt Walsh, those guys. I mean, they're all bigger influencers than me. I think they have more of a passion for it than I do. But no, I don't. Here's the thing: is I worked in the field. Yeah. I don't care anymore. So
yeah.
Oh my God, the communists are taking over. Yeah, okay, fine. I'm out of here. But I listen more for entertainment now than to be influenced. I've already formed my opinions at the age of 50.
It can be entertaining. Yeah. Well, it's I should well, anything else to say before we go then?
No, that's it. Just thanks for having me on. And
I knew you'd be entertaining. So yeah.
And then I guess buy my book, A World Without Men. There you go.
Yeah, buy Aaron's books. He's got Bachelor Pad Economics, A World Without Men, Enjoy the Decline,
Curse the High IQ.
Yeah,
and Boris the Shitting Buffalo. Don't forget about Boris the Shitting Buffalo.
That's Boris the Shitting Buffalo.
Very important book.
I don't know why. I don't know what that was about. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Aaron. Please buy my novel, Escape from the Village. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. This will be on. Thank you, Aaron Clarey, for coming on. It's been great having you.
For having me.
And also, you're on Blogspot too, right?
Yeah, my blog's still there. Sure, for now, till YouTube takes it away.
I think is it CaptainCapitalism.com?
Captain Capitalism. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll provide some links. But thank you very much, Aaron. Have a good day, and we're out.